All right, team. We are back in the Fireside PM podcast, and I have a fellow Zoogler with me, Michael Margolis, who he and I intersected in the Kirkland office at Google back in the early days, and I've been avid follower of your work and thoughts and all of your adventures at Google Ventures as well. So, welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited that you invited me. It's good to see you.
Yeah. Yeah. Good times. Good times. So, maybe we could just start with a little bit of an intro. I don't know what you did before Google, but maybe a little bit about pre-Google and then your journey at Google, because it wasn't a classical UXR path.
No, it was a little different. Yeah, it was long, so I'll try to keep it short. So I studied anthropology and then sort of stumbled into educational software. So I got to work as an editor originally, creating documentation, and then I was a producer at the learning company, then at Electronic Arts. And so that was kind of my introduction to software. And at the time, so this is 1990, 97. So it was disks in boxes, right? Floppy disks. And so learning about UX, and it was my introduction to usability. And it kind of, this is over a lot of years. It's also kind of riding different waves of technology. So then went from there to AOL for a little while. So I was doing that, and then was at a consulting firm, like a design strategy consulting firm, where I really learned to do pretty in-depth customer research. So it was working for very big brands, doing very big, expensive consulting projects for them to figure out new innovative things that they could be working on. And so learned from really excellent researchers there how to do that. So it was a lot of very deep ethnographic research. So did that for about 4 years, and then went to Walmart.com. So this was 2002. So very early figuring out how to put Walmart businesses online. Like how do we take flowers and photos and music and pharmacy? Like, what does this look like? And so what I had to learn there was how to take this other kind of ethnographic style research, these big, long, expensive projects, and do them fast, right? So Walmart was everyday low price, and it was a .com, and like, how do I compress this? And figure out how to accelerate it. So I did a lot of that and just got to work with a huge variety of businesses. And then I showed up at Google after that. So I moved up here to the Seattle area. And when it was still, I don't know, a couple hundred people up here, something like that. Now it's thousands in Washington. And so at Google was really interesting because it was also at high speed. It was also at scale that we were working at. And so all of these lessons that I learned were really valuable to me to bring there. And so I showed up as the researcher on Gmail in 2006. So it was pretty early Gmail days. So it was out there, and it was a live, seemed mature at the time, maybe more mature now, product. And then at Google, so did that, and then worked on some other real-time communication products that were in the Seattle area, and then was managing the UX team in Seattle and Kirkland up here. Which at the time was maybe a dozen people, but it was now is, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of people. And somewhere in the middle there led the researchers working on apps, Google Apps and stuff. So it was kind of a quick thing. And then 2010 shifted over to Google Ventures at the very beginning, pretty close to the very beginning of Google Ventures.
What was that shift like? Because it's not common for a VC kind of effort to bring on UXR so early. That must have been kind of innovative and interesting. Tell me more about
exciting. Yeah, it was an exciting time. I mean, what GV was really trying to do was establish itself, build a reputation kind of from scratch. Like, Google has a reputation, but why would we take money from GV? And so they started a bunch of operational teams. So kind of the thought was, when I was a founder, what did I need help with? Right. So I needed help hiring, I needed help with like PR and comms and product, and I needed help with design. And so they hired Braden Kowitz, who's an amazing unicorn designer, who I worked with on Gmail, as the first design partner at a VC firm. And so he was there for a little while, and he's like, oh, I need a researcher. And so that was my lucky break, brought me over. But it was a very novel idea for a VC firm to have a design team. And that team then, so for me, it was a very different transition to learn how to work with founders. I had this experience at Google where I was used to working with PMs and, in my experience, and then I would run across these certain people at Google. It's like, I don't know what the deal is with this guy, but like it's like a completely different kind of person, and they're not like listening in the same way, and they're just doing like the persona is completely different. And I didn't understand. And then it was like, oh, those were founders who had been acquired into Google and whom I was working with, and like they just were completely different. And so then I was working with a lot more of those, and we were figuring out, what does this mean to be a design team in venture?
That tell me more about that persona, the former founder who gets acquired into the mothership. Like, what made them different than the other product leads or, leaders?
Yeah, to me, the thing that seemed different was it's like they were playing by some different set of rules. Like we at Google at the time, right, there was this pretty strong culture. I think there still is, but at the time it was smaller, and of like how we work together and what we do, and here's the role that research plays, and here's where design fits in. And then there were these folks who were just like, I'm whatever, I'm just doing this thing. Like, here's where we're going, and that's where I'm going. And like, you can maybe help me, but if you're not going to help me, like, get out of my way. Like, I'm building things, and here's what I'm building, and hopefully you can help, but I'm moving. It was just, it felt very different. And as a researcher at the time, I was like, whoa, I don't know how to engage this, because they didn't know how to use me or want me particular, maybe. And so it took more, I had to learn how to show impact in a very different, very fast way. Like, how can I be useful? How do I fit into what they're doing? What do they need?
Yeah. And so then when you were at GV, you were surrounded by that kind of run through brick walls, founder mode mentality.
Right.
What were some of the things that you learned over the years in terms of how to engage with those folks that weren't as obvious when you started?
Yeah, a lot of it was, these are things that some of it was things that I had developed like as a consultant or, over years. But a big piece of it is being really focused on them and their needs and their business, and understanding really deeply what's blocking them, what's keeping them up at night, and how can I possibly add value to that, rather than there can be a trap, I think, that a researcher can sometimes fall into, which is feeling like I'm representing the customer, I'm representing the user, and so I want to be like bringing that voice here and trying to champion them and persuade people or influence them that this is what we should build or this is what we should do. And there's a role for that, but what I had to do was align myself very differently from that. My role is, how can I add value and add impact to this person who is building a business as fast as they can, has a bazillion questions, and has to make decisions with incomplete information all the time. And how can I help that rather than slow it down or try to spend my time persuading them that, like, oh, we should be doing this other thing. So I had to fundamentally change the way that I work, the way that I do that work, the way that I deliver the results. And so that was what I kind of developed over time, was how to do that and have that impact.
Would the actual UXR work that you did it look very different, or were the methodologies and the deliverables comparable?
They look quite different. I think the work is quite different in a lot of ways. To me, it's similar pieces. Like I described that journey I took, going from usability and learning these different things all the way up to Google. But they're quite different. So I guess a way I would think about it is, at Google, I was working mostly, like, my prime client often was the designer. And so if I'm working with a designer, which is awesome, right? Like that's fine, nothing wrong with that. And I worked with awesome designers. You and I probably know some of the same one. But their question.
Kevin Corpy says hello.
Kevin is on there, so he is a prime example of another one of those kind of unicorn designers that I get to work with. So often the question when I'm partnering with a designer, the questions are about, like, how do we build this thing? What's the best way to design it? Can people use it? Do they understand it? Will they like it? Right? But there's some presumption about what the solution is that we're building, often. Not always. I'm obviously generalizing a lot. When I'm working with a founder, or like senior PM people, at an early stage startup, which is mostly what I'm working on, it's pretty early stage. The questions that I'm answering are very different. The questions are more often, what should we build?
Right.
What's the value proposition? Who exactly is our customer here? And who is not our customer here? And so the fundamental questions that I'm trying to answer are usually pretty different. Also at Google, a lot of times those things were more mature. So you have a product that's out there, like Gmail. There were things we were trying to do, like how do we, for example, attract and convert Outlook users? Like that's a very particular design problem. How do you get them so that this model is understandable to them? And that's fine. But it's when I'm working with an early stage startup, this idea of like, what should we be building? Am I building the right thing? What do we build first or not? That's a very different kind of question to answer. And the other thing that I was learned to do, we talked about how do I convince or persuade people, is what I learned is this goofy way to describe it is to not be a reporter. Right. A lot of times a researcher like goes off and does something and comes back and then like, here's what I learned and here's the report and whatever, or here's even videos. And that's very hard to convey what happened or to persuade and to build alignment on a team with some report. People are better at it than I am, but I found it hard. So what I found, and I started doing this at Google, because early on Google had invested pretty heavily in video conferencing all over the place. So I do these things called watch parties. So basically, I don't do the research study. I don't do the interviews unless the whole team watches. And so I compress it. So I'll do a very small batch of qualitative interviews with a small, very specifically chosen group of people, these bullseye customers, I call them. And there's a particular way we do this with multiple prototypes. And the whole team is watching, essentially remotely, in either real back room or a virtual back room these days. And by doing that, at the end of that, and I've constructed the whole experience for them to see how we're going to do these interviews in a particular way to answer the questions that are most important to them. But in the end, they are debriefing and analyzing, and as a group coming to a conclusion like, oh, this is what we just learned. I don't have to like bang the table and say like, no, you're doing it wrong. Like the whole team is either convinced, oh, look, we're doing the right thing. That was awesome. Usually it's like, there's some adjustment. Like, oh, this is the wrong customer for this particular reason. Let's go find the other one, or here's what we have to change. And it's this very powerful way to do the work because then everybody has this alignment. It's a shortcut. I don't write a report. Like I haven't written a report in, I don't know how many years, because you can imagine a startup, like they're already going. They're like fired up. And either we're ready to like do new prototypes, do something different, or like they've already started building the thing.
Yeah.
So the speed of it and the efficiency of it is just really, really high.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like you could imagine they're probably already coming up with new designs halfway through that observing that UXR study.
Which is one of the things I have to coach them ahead of time. Like, don't do that yet. Like, wait until we're done. Wait till the end. Usually I do that. It's like in a day, depending on time zones, maybe over 2 days. So we really cram this in. And if you can watch, say, 5 interviews with a very specific bullseye customer, at the end of the day, you kind of have this data saturation. Like, oh, okay, I get it. Like I see what's happening. So it's always just like, don't start solutionizing until we get to the end. Like, wait.
What do you think that approach would work for a more later stage or established company?
Yeah. I mean, again, the method you use really hinges on what's the question you're trying to answer, right? And so it depends on if you're at a later stage company and you have something, and it's really very specifically a usability question. Does the whole team need to watch that? Maybe not, right? Like I just need to figure out, I have 2 different ways of doing this. But these, I mean, I always prefer it if everybody will watch it. But these are really, I'm trying to answer pretty fundamental questions for the companies or for the product team. So it depends on what you're trying to do. But I think it does work for a lot of things in large companies. I think what happens again, I'm generalizing a lot. I think what can happen at a bigger company is you can end up with more distance between product team and customer. and so then like researcher is doing work and then has to like spend, I mean, depending on the company, a lot of overhead to socialize what I'm going to do, what I did, what we learned. This is the results. Like, what are we going to do?
Mhm.
And it's a lot of other overhead work that gets done because of that distance from the customer.
Yeah. Do you think UXR is more impactful in established companies or with startups? I mean, I could see both arguments. Like one argument is it would be more impactful with established companies because the org is more detached from the customers and therefore needs that UXR kind of signal. On the other hand, I could see someone saying, well, no, startups are always trying to figure out, first principles questions, and any other signal they could get would be valuable. But then part of me also wonders, like, founders are pretty stubborn and like they have a conviction when they started the company too.
Right. They have to have the conviction, and that's fine, and then be open to new data.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You have to be convicted, but then if you learn something different, you have to be willing to be like, oh, okay, like that was wrong. Like that's fine, whatever. So whether it's more impactful in a big company or small company, I don't know. At a big company, I guess it's about the product. It's less about a company and more about like a product team and what stage are they at and what questions do they need to answer, and what's the risk that you're facing. So if it's right, Amazon talks about like one-way doors versus two-way doors. So if it's something that you're like, whatever, we can just fix it later, then okay, maybe just try something. But when I find it's most impactful is when it's right before I'm going to invest a bunch of time, a bunch of money, a bunch of effort. And that could be into marketing, like I'm about to do something or I'm about to, right? So when there's a bigger risk, then it's very impactful because I've very consistently saved founders many months of time and effort on things. They're like, oh, we were going to go down that path. You're like, now it's clear I'm not going to do that. Or I should like double down and like, shovel coal as fast as I can and let's go. But it's very impactful. Whereas it's something where, as you get more mature and it's smaller things, maybe the impact is smaller. It depends on how you measure impact, right? E-commerce site, you can have a big impact on a very small change.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
Right. So
I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a founder this week where we were talking about whether or not he was focusing on the best problem to solve and the right customer. And it's always a delicate conversation because, in this case, this individual, like he's put his whole life into this venture and I'm this outsider, advising.
Right.
And I could see a scenario where some founders, even if you did UXR as you described with some bullseye customers, they would say, well, those customers, they don't get it yet. Like, wait till they see, they don't, I'm like Henry Ford. I'm not going to ask people if they want a faster horse.
Right.
How do you deal with those conversations?
Yeah. Henry Ford thing is always like, right. Because
it's triggering for a lot of us. Yeah.
Agreed. Anyway, to me, part of the beauty of this idea of a bullseye customer is to get around exactly that. So what I do with founders and with a team is I go through an exercise, a bullseye exercise, I call it, which is pretty fun. I don't know if you ever wanted to do it or somebody on your call wanted to do it. We could do one live if you want. But basically, it's a way to get incredibly specific, much more specific than people usually are about who they think their target customer. So a bullseye customer is the very specific subset of your target market who initially is most likely to adopt your product or service initially, right? And so people will show up with like, oh, here's my persona, here's my ICP. I'm like, okay, having done this with hundreds and hundreds of founders, I know like that's probably not right. I don't know your business. Like I'm always meeting someone like, I don't know anything about your business, but I've done this enough times. Like I know that that's not going to be right. I just, and so what we do is I take them through an exercise where I essentially interview them, and and this stuff is all available on the site, Learn More Faster, or in the book. It's all free. You can see kind of what this interview guide looks like, but I basically drill into people a very specific set of things and get them to detail, and I'm teasing out of them because they know it, but a lot of times just haven't written down, like, who actually do you think this is? And what becomes really important is to define not only like what are the inclusion criteria, who do you think's in, but what are the exclusion criteria? And really ambitious founders usually don't spend as much time thinking about something that maybe is like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I guess that's true. If the person doesn't do that, like, then they wouldn't really be a customer. Like, okay, well, we're just going to talk to 5. So I want to make sure that we're like really narrowing down very specifically to what this is. And so we go through that exercise. And so then at the end, I say like, okay, here's the list of the inclusion, exclusion, and also we talk about talk about triggers. So sometimes there's something where something has happened recently in somebody's life and it's make them much more likely or unlikely to do this. Right. So let's say I'm looking for people who are new to exercising and looking for some new app to use. Right. And so something maybe has happened in their life that they're starting that. They've just started I don't know. What are we looking at here? Yeah. Sorry, they're just
they're a new exercise app.
Specific, so some trigger in their life, right? It's somebody who, for some reason, I'm making this up, right? They've gone through, they're doing a Couch to 5K. They've just signed up, or they've just met with a doctor, and a doctor has told them you need to be more active, or something's happened where now they're like, ugh, like I have to do this thing now. Like it's not just like, oh yeah, I should take care of that. I should take care of it. Like, oh crap, I got to sign up, right? Anyway, so you define a very specific set of criteria that the founder's like, yes, if you gave me those people, that is exactly the person I'm building this for. I'm like, okay, we're all in agreement. Like, and I don't know your business, so that's awesome. And then we'll find the people. So I write a questionnaire screener, and we'll find those people that match. Yeah. We all agree. Like, are these the people? And you're like, totally. If you find those people, they are going to be all over this. I'm like, okay, like I don't know. And so then we do it, and then we interview them, and we interview 5 of them in a day. And at the end, you're like, oh, well, 3 of them did, but what was it that was different about those 3? And the other 2, there was something else there that we didn't realize, and that's fine. And you add it to your list, and then you can like double down and like go recruit another batch that's a little closer.
That is fascinating. Yeah, I love that approach. It's sort of like the inversion of the magic wand question that you often ask users, like, well, what kind of product or feature would you love? Like now you're asking the founder, like, what would be your magic wand user? And you're kind of pre-negotiating that before the study takes place, because it's like, okay, so this is, and I'm sure they'll have deep conviction. Oh yeah, if you find me someone like that, they're going to be 10 out of 10.
Exactly. And I'm like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know your business like you, and so we're just okay. And then I'll go find them. And you have to. So the keys to this are about being really, really specific about who are those people. Very disciplined about when you recruit them. Like, I'm going to find the people that match that. This isn't like I'm just recruiting random people who are coming to my site and talking to them. It's like, you know, I often meet founders like, oh yeah, I've talked to 80 customers. I've talked to 100. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like a nightmare. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's fine. Like, that sounds cool. You're busy, but you're probably not learning very efficiently. It's super scattershot. So it's like, have a hypothesis, be very specific, and then like, let's just cycle this really fast as a team watches. And then at the end of the day, the team's like, oh, okay, let's adjust this thing. Let's change that.
Right. Do you think talking to 5 bullseyes in the day is sufficient, or like, why not 3 or 8?
So what happens through the part of the reason for 5 is it's logistically, like, I can do it in a day,
right?
Quite frankly, to do more than that in a day, like my brain explodes. And what happens is you reach data saturation. So after 3, people are like, I don't know, like, because it's enough idiosyncrasies. Like, I'm not sure what's the pattern. And then after 4 and 5, everybody's like, oh, I see. Like, and you're starting to hear this, you're realizing the things that you're hearing over and over. And also the team is like, oh, for God's sakes, don't make me sit through another one of these. Like, I want to change something. Like, like, I get it. Like, this person, what we need to find are people who are I don't know, used to run in high school and haven't run, like that's the thing. And now they're starting to run again. So they're like returning to running. Oh, okay. So I want to go back and find those people. So I don't want to talk to any more of the people you just recruited. Let's go get a new batch. And maybe the prototypes I've learned, we also want to do multiple prototypes. I can talk to you about that, why that's important. And we want to make some change and then like do this again. Like, don't make me do any more. Like, I get it. Let's move on. So 5 works really well. The times when we get to the end of the day and 5, you're like, it's not really clear. It's because for some reason the recruiting like wasn't crisp enough. And we've like ended up like, maybe sometimes for me, what happens is like I lost control of it and the team was doing the recruiting. Like, well, we had to fill another couple slots and we got these other people we know. You veered off the bullseye.
Yeah. Tell me more about the multiple prototypes requirement. Why do you do that?
So what I typically do is 3 prototypes. And again, this is early stage startups. We're trying to figure out like, what are we building? If you show one prototype, you build one prototype, there's a risk of a couple things. One is the team often is too wed to it. They're kind of committed to that thing and can spend too much time doodling on a thing and get overly committed. And if you show a prototype to a potential to your bullseye customer, you'll get feedback, right? You'll hear responses, but it's not really their job or their ability to like imagine what else this could be. So they'll like tell you stuff about it or whatever, and especially when it's value prop kinds of things that we're testing. But if I can give them some variety, then what you get is the like, oh, okay, and I'm trying to do the interview in a way where I'm very specifically not having them choose a winner, like, and it's typically 3 prototypes that I use. I don't want them to tell me like this is the one I want. What I want them to do is compare and contrast and tell me what are the elements of each of these prototypes that are important to you, that matter to you, that you like, that you not just like, that you love. I mean, sometimes you can see people like, right? And you get that kind of mild, encouraging, positive feedback, which is a no, right? But I'm trying to get them to compare, and so that I can kind of collect the Lego pieces that are the best parts and go build the next version that's like the best thing. So, for example, like, oh, I really like the way this company has a subscription model rather than like a pay as you go. But this one, I really like the way that they talk about security, and that's really important to me. But this one, I really think it's interesting that it has more sharing and has a social media built, whatever. And so they're like comparing and contrasting the value props. And sometimes we'll create those, and they're very simple. When I say prototype, it's just a page, like a PDF, quite frankly. It's flat. That is like, what's the homepage for this product?
Right, like a landing page.
What's the landing page for this product? And often I just try as much as I can to use free prototypes. So just take competitors' sites and just use those. Like, I don't even need to build anything. Like, it's pretty surprising to me how often founders are like, I'll say, like, have you tested your competitor's prototype? Like, oh, well, we've gone through all their products. Like, no, I know you've looked at it. But that's not, like, all of this, the goal is to see it through your customer's eyes. Like, I don't need to see it through the founder's eyes. Like, who cares? But have you tested these products with customers and seen what works or doesn't work? What do they love or not love about that? Like, that's if you haven't done that, you've like left something out, right? You're just missing out.
That seems super valuable. I would imagine if I were in the GV portfolio, I would absolutely take you up on this, value-added service. Did you find adoption of the GV UXR kind of support pretty high, or were there, portcos who were like, we're going to go with conviction. We don't need to do this kind of
mix, right? So you definitely have the people who are like, whatever, I'm building my thing and I'm fine. And that's fine, right? Like, especially when I was at GV, I was also an investor. So like, I want nothing but for them to all be as successful as possible. Right? Which is an interesting thing as a role where I'm 100% aligned with the founder. I want nothing more than for them to be wildly successful, right?
Yeah.
At GV. So and it depended on what things they were building. So they're it's kind of an extreme example, but like GV is split in terms of kind of digital products and like healthcare and biotech.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine a lot of biotech companies, like they're doing science, right?
Yeah.
I'll get you guys coffee, like I can't do a whole lot. And so that's an example where there wasn't a ton to do, but what's been really interesting to me was to get to do more work for more of those companies, healthcare and biotech, because these concepts are less familiar to them and hugely impactful. Because if you actually could understand, let's say you are working on a product and you're planning a clinical trial. Like recruiting for clinical trials is super, super expensive and like time consuming, like it's a huge problem. If we can narrow down the bullseye customer a little bit, like even just a little bit, and figure out like, oh, actually this group is more likely to be willing to accept this treatment, this therapy, this, like that's a pretty valuable thing. So have started to get to do a little bit more of that, which is pretty exciting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you find recruiting harder? Because it sounds like you're not just looking for, 20 to 30-year-old female athletes or something like that. You're looking for way more criteria, and meaning we'll have to not recruit a bunch of people that we normally would just pull from a panel.
For the healthcare and the biotech stuff?
Or in general, just when the more kind of specific that bullseye customer description is, then you're gonna have to talk to a lot more people to find the ones that fit.
It's interesting. One of the things that helped me along the way is that over these 15 years, the services that are available online to help you do fast recruiting have kind of proliferated. So things like userinterviews.com.
Yeah.
I can
Or
recruit,
user testing.
as long as I'm not looking for astronauts or something, like somebody, or like when I did a lot of work with oncologists, like they're not on there, right? They're not looking for $150 to come talk to me. But as long as I can get very specific, and I've been able to get like remarkably, like surprisingly specific groups through things like that.
Yeah.
The trick is to write a really careful screener questionnaire. And there's some art to that, right? So I'm trying to write it in a way that I'm not revealing like the right answers, right? Because if you post something that's like, I'll pay you $150 to talk to me if you are one of these things, people are like, yes, sir, call me. So there's some art and science to more art to write, and there's examples of a lot of this stuff in the book and at Learn More Faster. Tons of examples of screeners. But I got so I can recruit in a matter of days usually for surprisingly specific things, even like very specific diseases or other kinds of things.
I love it. So we have some questions from the chat. Do you have time for a few more minutes? Okay. And I'm also going to share my screen. So people who are interested in this topic, you can purchase the book.
Yeah, it's also free. If you just go to learnmorefaster.com, it's all free.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, here you go.
So you can just download the PDF is the entire book?
It's the whole thing. Giving it away.
Oh, wow. Look how generous you are.
Not selling anything. Yeah, so you can get all of that. There's also a bunch of resources down lower on the screen. So it's all the templates and stuff. It's videos that show kind of what do these interviews look like. Because I think they're also, the way I do these interviews what I'm told over and over is that these look really different from what what people have in their head of what these interviews look like. They're very conversational, very open-ended. And so you can see all that stuff. Yeah, all free.
Super cool. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. I'll put a link in the description below for folks who watch this on replay as well.
Yeah, for people who prefer a hard copy, it's like $7 or $8 or something.
Yeah. And what are you up to now, Michael? Are you doing some consulting, or are you gonna do other things?
So right now I'm just kind of taking a break. So I just left GV, and I'm gonna just take a little break. And then come January, starting to do some consulting. Going to consult with GV, work more with more of the healthcare companies, and then figure out kind of the other parts. Yeah,
I love it. So all right, so let's get into some chat questions. Thanks for everybody who's joined live. So Catalina is wondering, hey, does this approach change for later stage versus early stage startups? How do you think about the toolkit evolving?
I think the way that I think about this, it's again back to what I was saying before. It's a lot about what's the question that you're trying to answer, and it goes back to that. So A later stage, maybe a different way to think about it is, what's the stage of the product that you're
Yeah.
building? So if you're at a later stage, and it depends on what these days what you call a later stage startup. Like if I think about things in the GB portfolio that have been the portfolio for many, many years, like you can imagine other companies like, but
Let's
if
say
the
the
product,
startup, yeah, they have market fit, they're scaled, but they're looking to innovate further and maybe go into adjacencies or
exactly,
um,
expand.
refresh their
So,
current
so some
approach.
of
Yeah.
the key times when I find this is helpful is when the questions are kind of like, what should we be building? And maybe it's a new
Yep.
expansion. Um, and so it's when somebody is maybe trying to approach a new kind of customer. So maybe you're expanding into a new market, you're killing it in UK, and you want to expand it
Mhm.
into the US. Or you're adding some new feature, or you're about to start some new marketing push or something like that, or you're about to launch. It's also really good to troubleshoot. You're like, we've launched the thing, and it's like it's not quite doing what we thought it was.
Uh-huh.
And so a lot of this research is about understanding the why. Like you're looking at I often have founders like, well, I have all these analytics and we did all this blah blah. And I'm like, okay, but you don't understand why this is
Yeah.
happening. And so this kind of research is really powerful for digging into that. And it's about the nitty gritty nuances of that. You go talk to people and you're like, oh, I see. Like that's what's going on. So it's like
Yeah.
troubleshooting, or you can call it debugging,
Hmm.
or it's kind of getting the ground truth of like what's actually going on. This isn't working the way we thought it was. And so that, for a little bit later stage or post launch, is often more commonly what I'm doing. They're like, what is
Yeah.
actually?
Yeah, that's it. I think a lot of us think of UXR as part of the upstream process, before we launch something, making sure we're building the right thing or that it's going to be set up for success. But I totally hear you. Like in those scenarios where you launch it and you're like, it did okay, but it didn't really hit the way we thought.
Right.
Might have even conflicted with what we saw in early UXR. What a wonderful opportunity to kind of dig in and figure out like, okay, well, what happened? And now in that case, are you interviewing people who already use the product, or are we doing the bullseye approach again, but they may not have used the product? Like, how do you recruit for the post
Yeah.
launch?
So one thing that I found for me that's kind of a shortcut or a hack is, I avoid doing the thing that's very common. People are like, well, I want to talk to all the people who churned. I want to talk to all the people who left. Why did they leave? And I don't like doing that, because there are a bazillion reasons people don't do something, right? There are a million things you don't do. And I could try to interview you about that. It's a really boring, very difficult interview, because you're like, this is not important to me and I haven't done it. Like, why are we talking about this? I mean, there are other reasons why you would do exit stuff or whatever, but what I found is much faster is to talk to the bright spots. Find the people who are like behaving like the way that you hoped. Like, who are the people who have found whatever this thing is and have like blown it up? And they're like, oh my god, they're going crazy. They love this thing. Let's go talk to them. What is the deal? Right? There's something about those people that we need to figure out, and we need to go find a bazillion more of them,
Yeah.
or go find out and realize, and then size the market and like, oh, I see. It's this particular thing that they are all reacting to, that they're loving, and like there just aren't that many of those people, maybe, or there's something like that's not really what we're going to be building out in the future, or something. It helps you figure out what's going on. But talking to the people who are your bright spots and having them reflect back to you your value prop, is really interesting, because they'll usually amplify different aspects of it or describe it in some completely different way. Something will come up and you're like, what? You're doing
Yeah.
what? Because
Yeah, that
otherwise,
makes
if
perfect
you're
sense.
talking to the people who are churning, you're just like chasing a million possible
Yeah.
no's. And so
Yeah.
for me, in the I'm very impatient, and so and I like specificity and efficiency. So I go the other direction.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense now that you put it that way. I could see you potentially pivoting prematurely because you talked to a few people who churned off, but for completely arbitrary reasons, but then you apply that to the whole group. Whereas I would imagine if you find the bright spots there's often some commonality. Like if you find 5 power users that just love the thing, like there's often a thread that kind of
Right. Again, what
extends.
I'm always getting back to is like, who is the bullseye here? Like, what's the,
Yeah.
there's often like some very specific thing in there that you're like, oh, it's about that. Like an example, just to try to make this more concrete, is I did work with Zipline as a drone delivery
Hmm.
company. And so they were trying to figure out a new delivery service for specialty medication. So these are very not stuff that you're getting at the CVS at the corner, right? Very specific
Hmm.
kinds of diseases and stuff. And so they knew it wasn't every disease, like they'd narrowed it down. And so we worked through this. And what we ended up figuring out was the people who are most worried, because what they were trying to figure out is like, how do we optimize our infrastructure and the logistics of this? Is it like, I need to get you this medication as fast as I possibly can? Like this is an important medication and you're just going to wait. And like, whenever I can get it to you, you'll just be there. Or is it more important that it's like, well, you might be willing to wait a day or so, but it's like a very narrow window when I'll deliver it. And those are very
Hmm.
different implications for the delivery. And so what we did a couple rounds, and what we figured out was the people for whom this was the biggest problem are people who are getting specialty medications that are refrigerated. For example.
Mm.
So like
Yeah.
that narrow window, like because other people are like, well, it's really important, but I'm not like waiting till my last pill. Like this is a
Hmm.
critical disease. Like I'm not standing around. Like that's not how this works. You can put it in the mailbox. Like it's fine, whatever. But that was one of the examples, was if it's refrigerated and there's like this critical thing, like, oh, okay, now let's look at how many of those people are there, right? You can then, it's a very
Yeah.
different lens on your whole business.
Yeah. When you look at those bright spots, it's interesting to the extent that it's also interesting to the extent that it helps you figure out your bullseye. It's like, oh, they're all looking for refrigerated. That might not have been,
Right.
in our discussions earlier.
Right.
So
In
you're
this
kind of
case,
backing
again,
into the
we
bullseye.
did this particular thing before they built it
Yeah.
out. But yeah, I mean, hopefully you do it before, and if something's not working, you can debug it and figure out like
Yeah.
what's we missed something, and that's fine, right? The whole goal is just to learn as fast as you can. That's
Totally.
my approach to this. That's what all this, you can tell, is, right? It's like how quickly can I like try to get the answer to you?
Yeah. Love it. We have another question from live chat. Joseph is saying, hey, AI note taking has changed the way I do customer interviews and requirements, recording it and getting the transcript and notes enables him to focus on the customer. How has AI kind of changed your process?
This is interesting. So because of that question, I can see that you are probably not doing this with the team watching, because the way that I have avoided taking notes for many years is the team is watching and taking all the notes. And
Mm,
we actually have found that it's valuable to, it's been increasingly difficult, but you can get the team to take notes, like actually take notes rather than rely on the AI. Because what I want them to do is to lean in and really pay attention and focus on it, rather than kind of lean back and think like, well, somebody else is taking the notes and I'll read it later or whatever. I'm checking my email. Um, so, so I don't use it for note taking. Haven't. Um, it is helpful for teams I've seen to do it for summaries and this kind of thing and to generate the notes. Sometimes if they've all watched it together, what I've seen is at the end of the day, like the snapshot of like, tell me what were the 3 most important takeaways, like that was
mhm,
kind of it. Like how much analysis do we need to do? Like you kind of know it as a team.
mm,
Some of the things that have changed are the ability to make these kind of prototypes that I've talked about.
right.
That can be much faster for certain kinds of things. The
Hmm.
trick to these prototypes actually, though, is the writing, right? Because if you're trying to describe these value props,
Hmm.
um, it's the way that you're describing the product becomes very important. Like what are you emphasizing here or not, and how
Hmm.
do you talk about it? So the AI can help you with that, but you have to be a little careful about it. Um, so I would say that that's one thing, but it hasn't changed my process a lot. I think that I worry, quite frankly, about how AI, um, the way some of it is getting used, is creating some distance, again, some barriers between teams and their customers in a way. I don't know,
Hmm.
there are a lot of tools now where things are, You can use them to like do basic interviews. So my bot will go talk to your bot and like come back with some feedback. And you can tell the way I like to do this is have a team watch, right? So when teams are reluctant to spend the time and really get to know their customers, it's a little sad to me, quite frankly.
Yeah, yeah. You could imagine some stuff not only gets lost in translation, but also it's different when you see the customer say it versus reading a report saying the customer said this.
Yeah, I mean, the power of doing this kind of research, I think, is in the nuance. It's in the nitty gritty. It's those details. It's getting people to. What I'm often doing is trying to get people to tell stories, right? So if I'm trying to figure out, you're trying to get some sense of prediction of like, what is this person likely to do? People are terrible about predicting what they're likely to do. So you can't ask them, like, would you use this? Like, that's garbage feedback. So what I'm usually trying to do is in the interview, like the first half, we talked about these prototypes, but the first half of the interview is just talking about their past experiences. So, how have you gotten your specialty medications delivered before? What's happened? What have you tried? What didn't work? What worked? What was frustrating? All this kind of thing. And then based on that past experience, which is where I put most of my weight in understanding what their attitudes or their feelings are, then we go through these prototypes and I can kind of project a line of like, what actually are they likely to do? Because if somebody's described what they're doing in the past, and then you show them like, oh yeah, we totally use that. And you're like, that does not match at all what you've described to me, like your history of adopting new things or your attitudes. And so I know that you are being polite to me, and I can dig in to understand like which part of this is appealing or not. Like, what are you talking about? And so then I can balance that. One of the founders I've worked with a bunch described to me that in addition to saving him a lot of pain, we've killed a few products together, ideas that he had, was also that he learned through doing this what no looks like. He's like, when I was doing this, that would have been, I would have taken that as a positive signal. He's like, now after seeing this and doing this with you, but it's like, oh, that's a no. This person I can see now that person is never going to do that. That's right.
Is that, do you ever see cases where they'll give you a no, but they're actually a secret yes, or is it almost always the false yes that you get that you have to be?
What I'm looking for is a pretty strong reaction. So this kind of tepid, like, oh yeah, that would be interesting, or I could do that. I could see how that would work. Like, yeah, that would be nice. That's no. That's all very polite no. What I'm looking for is people who are like, wait, what? Wait, so is this a thing? Like, does this product exist? Can I get this? Can I do that? But you're looking for some very strong, just unbridled enthusiasm.
Right, visceral reaction. Yeah.
Because anything kind of lower than that, you're like, okay, this is not a problem for you, right? Because I'm looking for the combination of like, this is a serious pain point or a problem or something that you are ready. You are triggered. There's a thing that has you like ready to do this. And now I've shown you solution and you're like, oh. And if I'm seeing that, then I'm like, yeah. And it could be that it's just the wrong people again, right? It's a match, right? It's a product market. So it could be it's the right product, but there's something about this customer that's not right. So I'm looking for both of those sides to find that fit. Because often that's the case. We're like, oh, these aren't quite the right customers. And that's fine.
Yeah. I'm there's this phrase founder ears that sometimes I think about, where a founder is like already has conviction in their vision, and then if someone says like, oh yeah, I could kind of see that might be helpful, like for some founders, like they're good, they're like, yes, we got it. So I'm glad that
there's huge confirmation bias. Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that's really different about doing this kind of work compared to say what founders are doing, like founders are talking to people, customers all the time. That's what they tell me. I'm talking to customers, like, that's awesome. I'm glad you're doing that. Don't stop. But that is a really different mode, right? They are usually pitching.
Yes.
A thing, and they're like, is this the thing? Do you want the thing? Right? And they're learning a lot from that, but it's very inefficient. It's very kind of random. As opposed to being in a mode, what I'm trying to do is rather than talk and pitch, I'm trying to listen. And I'm trying to be super curious to understand how do they see the world? How do they see the product? And to try to understand them. And that's, for a lot of founders, it's a difficult shift, right? Because that's what they have to do. They're pitching all the time. And so it's a difficult shift. And for me, it's literally like a character I play. When I go to do an interview, I take a deep breath, and then I'm like in interviewer mode, where I'm like super curious, and not in a false, creepy way, but like it's a mental shift for me, because my normal personality is not exactly like that. Right. But when you're doing those interviews, you just have to be as curious and interested as possible.
Michael, do you think there's a world where an AI bot can conduct these interviews?
I assume that there is, but conduct these interviews means, so I imagine if you had, I've done thousands of interviews, right? I imagine if you took those and fed that into something, right?
Yeah.
Somebody like you could take that, build something that was like a Michael interviewer. You could predict, like, what's my next question going to be? Like, what? I'm sure there's a rhythm to it and a routine.
Yeah.
To it. So someday, could it do that? I guess so. That's super sad to me for a bunch of different reasons. Not just like, oh, I'd be replaced, but like, it's just like dystopian that some poor customer is being talked to by like a fake bot like that. So probably, right? I wouldn't. I've seen enough change in about 35 years of working in tech that.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I wonder if the answers would be if you would get different kinds of answers if they knew it was a bot versus talking to a human. Maybe it could be better or worse. I don't know, but it
would depend on the topic you're kind of working on.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough to know. I'm sure people are studying this, like which kinds of things. And there are already versions of this doing simpler usability stuff. Like I know that aspects of this, it's being nibbled away, same as every other industry. Parts of my job are, it's being nibbled away by what this can do.
Now you talked about maybe one last thing is how you used to require the teams observing real time to take notes. I wanted to push back a little bit on that, because I could imagine, like, well, if I'm busy trying to take notes, I may not be able to listen as intently versus if I knew someone else is taking notes or some bot was taking notes. How do you feel like there's any kind of trade-off there, or have you just learned, like, no, you got to make them take the notes?
It's an interesting thing. So it's not like I've done some extensive experiment to prove one way or the other. Sometimes it just depends a little bit on the team and the personalities. And quite frankly, like there are times it's a team and they're like, my English just isn't good enough to do that. Right? Like I can't follow it that way. I'm like, okay, like we'll find either somebody else does it or we have a different way workaround. The way that we typically do is that it's two people taking the notes. So you have kind of the primary person and a second person kind of filling in the gaps. And so that helps. But what we've seen, and if there's something that I'm showing, if I'm doing something that's more interactive and they need to actually like really watch the interaction on the screen, like the things I'm describing, you don't
right.
Okay, then it's harder because you have to be looking at the screen and typing. Like, that would be harder to do. But these aren't. But what we've seen is it keeps the team engaged in a very different way. So like we're doing it together. It's a watch party. It's not Michael's doing interviews and we're all sitting there and watching it. Everybody is in it, and then so two people are taking notes in a shared doc. The team is also chatting in Slack or whatever their chat thing is.
Right.
Like making jokes or like ask, like, wait, this thing came up. Has anybody seen that product? Whatever. Somebody's able to send me chat comments to, like, if they need to ask a follow-up question about something, whatever. So everybody is very engaged and has a job, and we found that that's pretty important, so that you have a job and that they're really going. Not everybody does. We've done this where we've had like 40 people watching, and so not everybody is in that core team doing that. But
Michael, I promised you I'd keep it to 30 minutes, and we went to 54.
That's fun.
I lost track of time. It was too interesting to me.
Yeah, you can tell I love to talk about this stuff. So you got to come.
I really appreciate it. Folks can go to learnmorefaster.com for the full book, and then you can also purchase the printed out copy if you want, or the PDF is free. And then you have links on learnmorefaster.com to other interviews that you've done, so people can see more.
All the resources, all the checklists,
Yeah,
all the worksheets, and everything is there. So please try it and let me know how it works.
It's a great service, and you're very generous to kind of share all these key insights you've developed over 15 years. And excited to hear what you work on next. And really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is great. Super fun.
Take care, buddy. See you, Michael. Bye. All right, dude. How awesome is that he's making it all available for free? Love this man. Some takeaways and then call outs for you all, team. So one is one of the things that Michael reminded me about that I found very compelling was the amount of precision that you should try for your bullseye customer. So if you're building, let's say, a new coffee service, you may want to say, like, look, I'm targeting people who work from home in major cities, who work in technology, and who drink, at least 3 cups of coffee a day, and really value variety and freshness, and are willing to pay a premium for it. Like, that's specific. And that reminds me of advice I give a lot of founders, which is when you're building your product, to go massively narrow. And every founder will say, like, oh no, like that TAM is 1,000 times bigger than that. It's like, yes, I get that, but you've got to start with some wedge somewhere. You got to have a beachhead somewhere. And to the extent that you can really nail it for that one kind of micro customer segment, you can always augment it after. But I think the insight that Michael brings up is, if you have conviction in your idea and it isn't landing with that super bullseye segment, then you've got to reassess. And you don't have to guess, like, well, maybe I just need to give it some more time, because it's like, no, we found the exact customer that you said would love what you have. And, they're giving it 7 out of 10, which is basically a no. So that was takeaway number 1. I think takeaway 2 is this idea of having the whole team involved in the actual UXR. So it's not okay, we're going to go do this UXR and come back to you in a month with some readout that gives you all the takeaways, which in theory is more efficient. But I think his point is that, number 1, people don't get the nuance as if they were on the, behind the one-way mirror observing the conversation. 2 is they may not internalize it the same way reading bullet point recommendations versus actually sitting there and being kind of in the moment with the interview. I think those 2 things are really profound, and I've seen that myself in my experience as well, where kind of the more detached the UXR is, the more people maybe are likely to not get it, or not fully internalize it, or dismiss it. So that's takeaway number 2. And then takeaway 3 is a little bit of a plug for you guys. If you haven't already, I have a future of product management market research project. And you can go to my Substack, which is free, firesidepm.substack.com. And you'll see here a survey that you can take out. It takes about 5 minutes. And I'll put it in the live chat now in case you guys are available. There it is. It's a nice Google form. And it takes you a few minutes. And if you do fill out the survey, I will invite you to a private preview readout from me, as well as a discussion with a panel of product leads from across Silicon Valley and maybe New York. to talk about these questions. And the questions are like, hey, how is PM changing because of AI? Like, what are the key skills that you're going to look for PM in 2026? Do you think teams will get bigger or smaller? What are the skills required? Which AI tools are you using? So if you fill out the survey, you'll get the full results early. You'll get an invitation to the webinar free, but only for respondents. And you'll be helping kind of this whole PM community think about the way that our profession is changing, getting better, getting, different. And what are the core skills that people are going to need to be terrific PMs in the future? And what does a terrific PM in 2027 look like? That's a really, to me, a super interesting conversation to have. All right, with that, I'm going to say thanks. And if you can do me a solid, if you found this conversation useful, could you like and share it? It helps spread the word. All right, see you guys later. Bye, team.